July 6, 1990, I woke up like every other day about 5:30 in the morning. Couldn't wait to get to work. I loved my job. On the way to work, I was thinking of everything I had to do and always arrived down at the station about 7 in the morning. I did my rounds of our firehouses, and we got the call of a hang glider that had crashed. So I proceeded to the scene. We found the pilot to be critical. So our goal was to get that gentleman off of the mountain as fast as possible. The Jefferson County helicopter got on scene much faster than I had anticipated. The pilot had asked if I could move the hang glider to a lower area. I started to do that, and it started to lift off the ground. And then I fell about 15 feet off of a rock outcropping. So then I became the critical patient. Paramedic on scene came down to me, and he found me core zero. My heart had stopped and I wasn't breathing. And he started CPR on me, and my heart started beating again. But I was unable to breathe on my own because everything was paralyzed. I didn't know what the prognosis was with a spinal cord injury. I did not realize that it would be so in detailed of how your entire life changes. I mean, my personal life changed, my family's life changed. Here I was unable to move. I wasn't even able to breathe on my own. What was I going to do?
When we're looking at the injured worker's health and well-being, we're looking at somebody who may be separated from their normal life for an unknown amount of time, and the fear and the anxiety and the depression that can set in as a result of that, and that's just so detrimental to their health.
When an injured worker is off of work, that's probably one of the most uncertain times of their life. They don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage. They don't know how they're going to put food on the table. All of a sudden, they have all of these uncertainties in their life, and that can impact someone's recovery.
It's important to put their mindset in a fashion that they're thinking, I'm going to be back working, or I'm not disabled. And I think if you start that early, it's much easier.
We're looking at and treating the whole person. We understand that the provider has to look and see something much bigger than just treating the injury. It's how does it affect their family? How does it affect their livelihood? How do we help this individual return to life? Building that trusting relationship, having that friendly face. We want to make sure that we support the providers so that they can continue to be there and focus on the injured worker.
Pinnacle Assurance provides workers' compensation coverage for approximately 1 million employees in Colorado. When a person is injured or becomes ill on the job, it can be an aggravation, an inconvenience, or it can be life-altering. Our goal is to make sure an injured employee quickly receives the best care possible and continues to enjoy their family and life. As a Pinnacle provider, you hold the key to accomplishing this goal.
There are a lot of unique rewards and challenges to caring for injured or ill workers as opposed to other populations. The thing that comes to mind for me is that it satisfies my intellectual curiosity because you're able to engage with patients on a level that very often you don't have the time to in the primary care world, or you are kind of out of the scope of certain other specialties. And so you're able to talk to them about different aspects of their lives, including their occupational and environmental history, and get to know them in a way that a lot of providers won't. And it also gives you knowledge of the other aspects of your local community, such as the businesses where they work in, and their various roles in the local community.
The Division of Workers' Compensation is Colorado's regulatory agency that oversees workers' compensation benefits. The agency sets the medical treatment guidelines and the fee schedule, wage replacement rules and rates, trains and certifies providers caring for injured workers, and assists when there are disputes. When a worker is injured on the job, Pinnacle is notified through a process called First Report of Injury. The injured worker has 4 days to report an injury to the employer. The employer has 10 days to notify Pinnacle of the injury. Once Pinnacle receives the FROI, we assign a claim representative, acknowledge the injury with the employer and employee, and begin investigation and early intervention. Usually, the first provider seen becomes the authorized treating physician, or ATP. If an injured worker is initially seen in the emergency room, the next visit should typically be with the ATP. The physician creates a treatment plan and outlines any work or activity restrictions. They act as the gatekeeper and will coordinate necessary services with surgeons, specialists, rehab, and radiology services. A critical first step in the process is determining causality. Providers help Pinnacle understand how the particular injury or illness was related to the person's work.
Visit number 1, really important to address the causality, because the carrier really needs to know, are we covering this claim or not? And the patient needs to know, because if they're not getting coverage for it through workers' compensation, they need to pick that up with their private provider. Laying out expectations with the patient, even as much as you can up front, and educating them. What's the average length of care for a back injury? How long can you expect to hurt? How long do you think it will be until we're back at full duty status?
It is crucial to make some sort of statement about causality and to ask the appropriate questions to determine, was this caused by the work or was this caused by something else? You may actually be delaying the reasonable and appropriate care of the patient by not making that assessment sooner.
Once the provider determines causality, this helps Pinnacle determine what's called compensability. A compensable injury is one in which an employee is determined to have been injured during the course and scope of his or her employment, and the injury arose from the activities of the employment.
I tell my claim reps the most important decision they make in the life of the claim is compensability. We lean to our providers to clarify for that. So we'll ask them questions. Does it seem reasonable that the injured worker injured themselves the way that they described? Would they have this degree of injury from the accident the way that they described it? So our providers for that key compensability decision, priceless.
Once the claim is determined to be compensable, we follow DOWC guidelines for wage replacement and medical benefits and assign a disability determination. The worker may be awarded temporary partial or temporary total disability at this time. If Pinnacle determines the claim is not work-related or the policy is not current, medical care can't be billed to the workers' compensation carrier. When Pinnacle determines a claim is work-related and the claim results in lost time or there's the potential for permanent disability benefits, we file a formal statement of liability with a DOWC through a form called the General Admission of Liability.
From the very moment that the claim comes in to Pinnacle, we're in constant contact with our injured workers and our policyholders. We're investigating the claims, we're coordinating benefits, we're coordinating with the medical provider to make sure that the injured worker is receiving the appropriate treatment. So the claim rep plays many roles throughout the life of the claim.
While Pinnacle is doing this, the provider is continuing to care for the worker. Medical records must be submitted to Pinnacle for each visit. Any change in work status or restrictions must be communicated to Pinnacle and the employer. The DOWC has provided a special form called the WC-164 that must be completed on the initial visit, for any status changes, and at the closing of the claim. You can obtain forms and claim information through Pinnacle's provider portal on our website. The provider will follow the DOWC medical treatment guidelines and order testing, procedures, and therapy as needed. The provider and Pinnacle will engage in increased coordination and communication for complex or catastrophic claims. Bills are submitted to Pinnacle throughout the treatment phase and processed for payment. Medical records and WC-164 forms are matched to the bills to validate the services were performed. Internal auditors review services to verify the documentation meets accepted coding requirements. Bills that are denied for medical necessity, not meeting requirements, or missing documentation may be appealed.
There are a lot of things that Pinnacle offers that you don't typically find in insurance companies. There's a provider relations specialist that's actually come into our office and helped us with billing and coding.
If providers need more information, Pinnacle has dedicated provider relations specialists who can answer questions or provide tools and resources by phone or email. They can also bring customized resources on site to provider clinics. For billing questions, Pinnacle billing specialists can come to your office. If you need assistance with developing modified duty for a specific industry, Pinnacle could bring out a return-to-work specialist to train your staff. Occasionally, services that are outside of the DOWC medical treatment guidelines may require prior authorization. Authorizations are easy to obtain by contacting the assigned claims representative. Pinnacle will review medical records and the request for services. Medical case managers and physician advisors approve or deny the request.
Pinnacle has done a great job at saying, here is a list of everything you can do without calling us for authorization. If it's in the treatment guidelines, it's covered. Simple treatments, we don't have to have any delay.
Under Colorado state statute, there are certain situations that must be presented to independent physician advisors. Pinnacle maintains a panel of physicians with expertise in specific specialties and subspecialties. These independent specialists are uniquely qualified to understand specific conditions or injuries because they are practicing physicians, experienced with patient care. They are able to make decisions and recommendations on what is best for individual patients by following DOWC guidelines and best practices for clinical treatment.
When I was in intensive care, my first thought was, and this really hit me, how am I going to be able to pay for my children's college? How was I going to provide for my family? I thought I was done. My work career was done. The people at Craig Hospital, the doctors and therapists, really provided me the tools to go back to work. I think it was at that point in time where my depression went away, and I realized that I still have a future after this catastrophic injury.
The provider's role in the return to work process is crucial. Number one, because our starting point is always going to be the restrictions which they're giving the injured worker. So that's where we jump off from.
If you have them working early and functioning, they tend to do much better. The thing that I stress to them is the idea that we want you moving, we want you functioning.
If they're just sitting at home and they're used to being at work, the body, it's not going to react really well. It can decondition very quickly. And so a lot of times getting them back to work can really help with their recovery physically.
What I always tell my patients is, here are your restrictions. If you can work, great, that's a bonus. If they don't have work available for you, here's what I want you doing at home.
I think the Pinnacle resources that are most valuable to our providers are return to work. They can work with our providers even before an injury occurs. They'll go out and visit a policyholder, identify some modified duty tasks, and then they can work with our providers to help them identify for employer X, they have A, B, and C, D types of jobs for their injured employees. Many of our policyholders have return to work programs in place long before a claim even happens. Another resource I can think of is our safety services.
We'll go out and we'll make in-person visits to a policyholder's location. We'll usually sit down with the policyholder and discuss their past accidents. We look at their accidents and identify accident trends, and based on that, we can talk to them about their exposures, their hazards, and what are they doing to prevent these types of accidents from happening in the workplace.
So use those resources, ask questions. If you're not sure, give the claim rep a call, give Pinnacle a call, because there's a lot of things out there that we can do to help get our injured workers back to work.
One thing that's very important is the task letter. They are a list that outlines the potential modified duty tasks that the employer might have, and it's a checklist for the provider to indicate, yes, the person can do this specific task, or they don't check it, and then that's a no. So we submit these to the providers as part of the formal job offer process as outlined in Rule 6. From a legal standpoint, it has to be filled out by somebody with an MD or a DO designation, and that is vital to the whole process.
It is the responsibility of the ATP to determine maximum medical improvement, or MMI, and to notify Pinnacle once the milestone has been reached. MMI occurs when no further treatments or procedures will significantly change the patient's current functional status. According to the DOWC rules, MMI does not mean patients are without pain or physical restrictions, only that they have reached their maximum medical improvement. Once the employee is at MMI, it may be time to close the claim. The ATP sends Pinnacle a closing WC 164 form along with a narrative report signed by the physician. At this time, the physician will address medical impairment and any necessary maintenance care needed after the claim is closed. In a typical claim, once the physician places the worker at MMI, a final admission is filed to the DOWC and the claim is closed. Sometimes during the course of a claim, there's a need to clarify the medical and/or legal status of an injured worker through an independent medical examination, or IME. An IME can be requested at any time during a claim. After the MMI determination, the injured worker or the carrier can request an IME through the DOWC if they do not agree with the treating physician's determination of MMI or the permanent medical impairment rating. When an IME is conducted by the DOWC, it is referred to as a DIME. The settlement process is another way claims are closed. Pinnacle and the injured worker agree on a one-time payment to cover long-term benefits and any future costs.
Our goal is to help support providers to make it as simple as possible. So we want to hear from our providers, not just when things are going great, but also when things aren't. And we want to know what we can do to help support them for them to be successful.
There are a lot of unique benefits to working with injured workers that I didn't find in the primary care world. You get to slowly watch them get better, and you get to see them more often and become a part of their lives and help to address not only their work life but their home life as well.
Oh, we love it when patients say, "Do you take private insurance?" Because you know, if they were first told they have to come see you, and when the case is done, they feel good, they felt like they had great care, and they want to turn their private insurance over to you, it's a wonderful compliment and always feels very good.
It takes a whole bunch of people to get one that has been injured to my level back to a productive person in the society, paying back. It not only pays back the community, it gives that person a sense of being and purpose. And it gave me a bright outlook for the future of my life. And I love my life.